Hey, welcome. My name is Zach Air, and I'm the education manager for United World Wrestling. And I'd just like to welcome everybody for joining me here today. So it's always great to look through the list of those attending and see so many great friends in attendance. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me today on this webinar. Today's topic is referee positioning, and when I look at this, I think this is really a topic for all referees. I think when you start looking at this, is this going to be something that can help you as an individual who is maybe just getting started as a referee? And then it's also great for those trying to make that step from being a national referee to an international referee. And in one of the early webinars I said that, when we talk about even at an international level, how do you go from being one of the good referees to being one of the best referees? And I said there's a few things that the best referees do, and they do really well. And one of those areas is referee positioning. So certainly very excited to be able to go through with you just some things that, may help you get you thinking, may help, work to get in that best position possible to be able to make that best call as a referee. So I think, so I'm excited to be here with you. And just as we get started, again, if you have any questions at the bottom of your screen, certainly please feel free to, write in the question at the bottom. And at the end of the webinar, I'll gladly go through as many questions as time permits. The next thing I want to talk quickly about here is the United World Wrestling Academy. So this just got released a little over a week ago, and we're really excited, just with the number of people who have been visiting the site. This is going to be kind of a one-stop for all education-related materials. So we hope that you will have an opportunity to go check it out, get logged in, create an account. There are some online courses that are available now. And I know that, as we're going through this beginning process of getting this launched, there's certain little technical difficulties that have kind of come up and things maybe aren't quite working as well as we have. Please know we're working on those diligently to get those fixed and make sure everything looks and works really well. So I would encourage you to, go there, visit. I think it'll be a great place for you to be able to go and just kind of, catch up and see, what the latest is from an education perspective. I know that there are a couple of courses on there that you can take right now. One is Ready to Wrestle, which is kind of goes through the history a little bit of wrestling. And then the other one is the online rules test, which goes through a lot of the basics of the rules. And then the last one is an introduction to referee course for those of you that are, referees just kind of going through the basics. It's a number of things that I've been covering over the series of webinar topics that I've been delivering. Many of those things are in that introduction to referee course. So we encourage you to go there, take an opportunity to look through the site. And certainly if you run across something that doesn't seem to be working well, please email me. We need to, that information to keep trying to make this better and better, over time. To get started, one of the first things I'd like to do here is just run a poll. So if you could take an opportunity right now and let me know where you're checking in from, like what continent or region, and then what your current role is in wrestling. Are you a coach or a national referee, wrestler, national federation representative? And you only get to select one. So, select the best one that describes you in this process. Yeah, I appreciate everybody here. We'll go a few more seconds here to give you a chance to vote and select. And just it's always interesting just to see where everybody's checking in from. So it looks like today we have those from Europe leading the way. So again, it's outstanding to see how many of you are here. All right, so hopefully you're able to see the results. So we've got 46% of you, just about half of everybody that's joining us today is coming from Europe. So great, and then Asia, Americas, and Africa. I saw Willem, so thank you, Willem, from South Africa for joining here today. And a majority of everybody here is an international referee, a couple of coaches. So it's great. I think as a coach, I think it's always great to take an opportunity to join referee webinars because it's a great place to learn and figure out how things are getting called and what they're doing and what's going on behind the scenes. And as it does that, it helps you make you a better coach in the process. So welcome to those coaches and national referees that are here as well. The first thing we'll look at here is our key learning points, like what is our hope for today? And so there are 7 kind of areas or topics we're going to take a look at when it comes to positioning. One of those is going to be changing levels, so we'll start with that. Then we're going to get into anticipating actions, like knowing where that action is going and being in the right place. Being able to see the scoreboard, we'll talk a little bit about that and the importance of that. When we look at the next one is distance of wrestlers, like how far away should we be from the wrestlers? And this is based on a variety of different things. So I'll kind of give you some of those things to think about as you have to kind of experiment and practice yourself to figure out what that right distance is. Getting confirmation. How do we position ourselves for, getting in and making confirmation for like passivity? And then we'll also look at some positioning based on a few areas, like when they're neutral or versus when they're par terre, and also when actions are going out of bounds. So these are the areas we'll be taking a look at today, and we're going to be sharing some videos in this process. So I know that sometimes with Zoom videos, they don't always come through as clear, but certainly, hopefully, you'll be able to see this, or at least be able to get the experience of what the main points are with each one of these. So let's take a look at the first one here, which is changing levels. And the first one here is being able, this first video to our left here, we'll take a look at this. This is a great job of the referee, moving with the action and then also being able to change levels as they go to the danger position. Even though they're going out of bounds, Carlos still does a great job. Let's try that again. I could tell it got stuck a little bit. So here we go. If Carlos makes there's a great throw by Red, and Carlos gets in great position, and he follows the motion as it goes. He moves, and notice, even though they're in the danger position out of bounds, he still made a habit of changing levels and getting down. And I think that's such a critical aspect of great referees, is that ability to change levels anytime they go to the danger position, even if it's out of bounds. Because you're just practicing habits that will allow you to be in the right place when it happens. So Carlos did a great job of moving and then changing levels and being in a great position here. Had this been in bounds, he's in perfect position. The next video here in the upper right corner, we'll take a look at this. The referee just does a fantastic job across the board. So I'll kind of walk through a little bit of what he did here in this process. So he's moving, and now notice he sees Red make an attack. So the first thing he does is he moves back to the other side, immediately changes levels when he sees the action, and then is able to score the points. Kind of watch that again here. So the first thing that I notice in his positioning here is he sees Red make an attack. He sees Red make an attack here. So as soon as he sees Red make this attack, he immediately is going to start moving the other direction here. So he moves back towards behind Blue, because now he's anticipating where that action is going to go. And then what I want to focus on here is when he sees this action, notice how he immediately he drops into this position right here. He's getting down. He's in great position here to score this, but he's in great position to be able to call the fall. So he's in perfect position here that if there was a fall, he would be able to call that. So he does a great job. He evaluates it and then scores the 4 points. So just a great job by the referee here in this position. So anticipating it, dropping where he's at, and then scoring the points. So excellent job. And then the last one here in the bottom right-hand corner, we're changing levels. Sometimes when we get into the fall position, we have to be able to get all the way down. And as a referee, we have to be able to move, get up and down off the mat very quickly. And sometimes you have to get as low as possible. So here, again, another great friend here, Abraham Gallagher, getting down, scores the points. And notice he's going to get down into the best position. So he's in the best position possible here to score that. So here he is, gets down, is able to look for that fall. So sometimes as referees, we have to be able to change our levels to get the best position to be able to see the action that we needed to. So he got down, he's able to see the fall. He then asks for confirmation, and then ends the match. So again, a great job of changing levels and getting in positioning. And I think that when we look at this, one of the biggest things when we're talking about changing levels is really just whenever they go to that danger position, just making a habit of getting down quickly. Like no matter where you're at, drop and change levels. Once you change levels, if you can see it, great. If not, then you can move quickly to get to the position. But what we don't want to do is, if there is a fall, we don't want to miss that opportunity to call that fall. And we certainly cannot call falls while we're standing up and down. We have to at least drop and get to a knee. So these are some good examples of that changing levels and getting into the best position possible. The next part here is anticipating positions. And I think that this is a mark of great referees, is the ability to be able to anticipate where the action is going to go. So here are some things or some strategies that you want to consider when you're doing this. Number one, keep learning wrestling techniques. If there is one thing that I think is super helpful in this process, is getting into the practice room with your teams. Going in there, listening to what the coaches are coaching, how they're coaching the techniques, because as you learn more wrestling techniques, you understand what's supposed to be happening in that move, and it allows you to get to where you need to be able to evaluate that action correctly. And I think that that's one of the things I try to do the most. And one, as a coach, I'm in the practice room a lot, working with the wrestlers. But anytime you get an opportunity to spend time with one of our national coaches and talk about technique, it really helps me become a better referee, because I understand that situation and what they're trying to do better. So keep learning wrestling techniques. Never get to the point where you're like, I think I know all the, because what I can tell you is the technique is constantly evolving, and there's more and more actions that are coming up that didn't exist 5 years ago. So keep learning. The next thing too I would encourage is watch wrestlers compete in other matches. For those of you that are at some of the major competitions, you know how the process works. There's a large number of referees on each mat. You probably will work maybe 2 times an hour. That's it, 2 times an hour. So out of 1 hour, you're going to work maybe 15 minutes as a referee or a judge. Well, what do you do the other 45 minutes? Well, the one thing that I tried to make a habit of particularly was I did 2 things in that 45 minutes. One, I tried to watch who I believed were the best referees, because there's a reason why they were getting the big matches, and I could look at their mechanics and what they did and how they handled those matches, so I could implement that into my refereeing style. I also took an opportunity to watch the wrestlers who were competing, because as you know, the winning wrestlers are going to keep continually coming back up again. So I would watch the matches to see what wrestlers were doing. That way it gave me a better opportunity to understand, well, what do I expect out of this wrestler if I happen to have to referee them later? I remember there was a match, I can't remember which tournament was at, maybe the European Championships in like 2012. And there was a match that I wasn't refereeing, I was watching, and it got really physical. There was a lot of unsporting behavior by both wrestlers, a lot of clubbing, and maybe an underhook, a punch. And I remember the winning wrestler was just as guilty as the defending wrestler in this process. And I remember watching this thinking, if I had this wrestler later, like, that is not going to happen. And so sure enough, the next match, I have that wrestler out there. So I walk out there, and the first thing I did, because I had watched the match before, is I just looked at him and I said, this, no. And he looked at me and said, okay. And then we wrestled the match. He wrestled the match, and it went well. But I think, had I not watched that match and knew what to expect, those are things that I'm trying to take care of in advance. And that goes with technique and anticipating positions as well. So take time to watch those wrestlers compete and learn what they do. Because what they do, they're going to continue to do in other matches as well. Also take an opportunity, if you're refereeing, to learn during the match. Like, if you see a wrestler hit an action and they're successful with it, there's a pretty good chance they're probably going to set it up and come back to it again. So once you see it once, now you can begin to anticipate what to expect after that. So that's one area. The other part too is knowing, like, who's winning and who's not. Where do you position yourself based on who do you expect the attacking wrestler to be? So I think there's a lot of things you can do and learn during the match. And I will look at a couple of videos here in a second with that. But really understand the goal of this is to be where the action finishes. So all of this process and everything that I've talked about is literally trying to put the referee in the best position to score the points. Because sometimes we know when actions go away from us, we're not sure if they went to danger or not. because we're not maybe in the best position. So we have to score what we think and hope that that's correct. And the other two, the judge and match chairman, will, get it correct. But if we can work on being in the best position, we're going to be able to see that and really evaluate that correctly. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of how you can learn during the match. So this first video here is from the Pan Am Juniors a few years ago, and this is Cody Gessel, Casey's younger brother here. So here's the start of the match. So we're kind of 6 minutes, it just started. Red has a nice double leg out of bounds. Cody scores at 2 points and then goes back. So he scored it correctly. The action kind of went away from him, because if you watch it, when he started, he was on this side. She doubles. Now he has to get over here quickly to see that action. So, and he scored it right. He scored it as 2 red. All right. Now let's come right back. So here we are right after they went out of bounds. Now we're back and starting again. And so here Cody starts him again. Now, notice what he did right here. Just even to start with, he normally backs out. He has, most referees are very predictable on where they go. If you've ever take the opportunity to watch yourself referee, you probably do a lot of things that are very predictable. In this case, he has a tendency to blow the whistle and then back out to that would be to his left. But he realized as he started to back out to his left, he's like, wait a second, red just fired a double right out of the gate. I probably need to start working to the other side. So if red does this action again, I'm going to be in the best position possible. And sure enough, what does red do? Within 10 seconds of restarting, red fires that double, and notice the position. Gosh, perfect position right there. He was in position. Here's the double in process. As it lands, look where he's at. He's already in great position with this to score this. Gosh, that's just a great example of learning on the mat during the match. Red hit a double. You know what? She attacked her. It was really good. I'm going to start working behind blue a little bit because I'm expecting red to double leg again because it's still so early in the match. And sure enough, great double leg again. He's in perfect position, scores the 4 red as he goes. So again, just some examples of, learning during that match and anticipating position. Because again, that's one of the most critical parts of going from being one of the good referees to being one of the best referees. The next one here is seeing the scoreboard. And I like this picture below, and this picture came up in a few other webinars. And this diagram is actually from Tim Pearson. And Tim has a great document out called The Art of Refereeing. So if you're ever looking for a document that kind of just explains like just the process of refereeing, not so much on how to score points and what the points are, but just the process of refereeing, it's a great document. It's on the USWA website, and again, it's called The Art of Refereeing. And this document, this picture is on there. But what I like about this picture is here we have the referee. He's positioned himself, where he can see the wrestlers, and he can also see the wrestlers and see through them to the scoreboard. That is a critical aspect, in my opinion, as a great referee, is knowing where the scoreboard is and being able to see that and view that at all times. It's also a great position here because he can also work, they can also work with the judge and match chairman and still have eye contact with those individuals if needed. But I can tell you as a referee, personal experience, I have a tendency to keep my eyes focused on the wrestlers, and typically where I'm looking most of the time is the scoreboard. I like to know what the time is on the board. I think it's important. One of the reasons, and the first point up here, is the timing of calls. Sometimes there's a time in which you need to make these calls based on the match. For example, you wouldn't want to stop the match with 29 seconds to go or 28 seconds to go in the first period and try to put somebody on the activity time. And again, by looking at the clock and knowing the time on the clock, you would know not to stop that for that situation. Even more important, like with cadet level, because if the score is 0-0 after 1 minute, you have to put them on the activity time. Whether they deserve to be on the activity time, it could have been 1 minute of just really good actions, but nobody scored. Somebody has to go on the activity time. Well, you don't want to stop it with 7 seconds before that minute. So there, you wrestled for 53 seconds, and now you stop the match. You give a warning, and then 7 seconds later, you have to stop the match again. Like so many stops in a row so quickly as a referee just isn't good for the flow of the match. I know as coaches don't like that constant breaking of the time. So again, just having an idea of what that time is in the clock is so important. I know, for example, if I'm going out refereeing, no matter where I'm at, how many clocks we have, which, internationally, it's great when we go to the big tournaments because they have two scoreboards. They have one on both sides. So it's hard not to be able to be on the mat and not see the scoreboard. But at local events, I probably don't have two scoreboards. So you'll find if you watch me referee at those events, you'll see that I typically work on an angle where I can always have some sort of visual contact with the scoreboard, because I want to know when the match is going to, what times are coming, when is the match going to end. And I certainly don't want somebody to have to let me know that the period is over. I think that's my responsibility as a referee to know that timing at all times. So it's just a good place to do that. Knowing the score is such a critical aspect as well of this. Do you know what the score of the match is? Sometimes I know when referees score points, they score points, and they'll have a tendency to look at the judge and match chairman to see if their points got confirmed. I typically don't do that because all I need to know is I know what the score was before. I scored whatever I scored for that action. All I need to do is circle and find the scoreboard, and I can tell what they confirmed. I know whether they confirmed what I scored or if they called something else. So I don't need to look back and forth to see what was scored. I can just check the scoreboard. I also can know if there's an error, like I scored two, there was a takedown and it didn't go up on the board. So we can get that part covered as well. And then just better control of the match, knowing when to leave them down and knowing when to bring them up, in certain situations. And you do that by knowing how much time is on the clock. And we'll talk more about that control part in a couple of weeks when we talk about controlling the bout. So the first example here, taking a look, is during wrestling. So I think this is just a great example here. The referee, gets down here, sees it, scores the points, is getting in position to look for the fall. All right, she's able to get off her back, and notice right then he just took a look. He just peeked at the time to see how much time was left, and now he knows, all right, time is up, and now they can go for the break. Again, just a great job of being able to peek and take a look at that, take a look at the clock and the scoreboard to know how much time is left before so that ends when they do. So again, great referees are really good at that. The last one here is taking a look at the scoreboard during a pause, like a pause in a match. So sometimes there's a break, and then during that break, you take an opportunity to check the scoreboard as you're walking the wrestlers back to the center. So this is just a great job here. This is the Freestyle World Cup some years ago. And so, here our referee here is Umberto Fazzolino, and he does a good job, scores the 2 points. So he looks, he's in good position here, and now he's going to stop the match. So he brings them up pretty quickly, and at this point, he is looking at the scoreboard. He checked the scoreboard. He knew that the wrestlers were just getting up, so he was able to take his eyes off briefly for a second. He was able to take his eyes off those wrestlers, check the scoreboard, but he knows immediately right now there's two problems. There's two problems with this. The clock was still running, and they never put the 2 points up on the board. So when he stops, he looks, he turns and says, wait a second, the clock's still running. And he goes over and says, no, there should be, he indicates that there was also another takedown and that they have the correct time on the scoreboard. Because this is a critical part of the match. Blue is starting to make a comeback here, just scored 2. He brought him up quickly, and he wants to get him restarted again. We don't want to take a long break here because, as for wrestlers, conditioning is an important part of this, and we want to keep that match going, as a result of that. So we don't want to take long breaks here. But he did a great job of catching those two things very quickly. One was the 2 points not going up, and the other one was the time was still running. So he saw that, because when he brought him up, he was in a great position here. Like when he brings him up, notice how he's standing right here. He's right in front of him, so they're not going to do something they shouldn't do here, because of his presence there. And now he just glances over at the clock and notices that there's a problem. Such a great job as a referee in that position. The next topic here is looking at the distance from the wrestlers. Like, how far do you work away from them? Sometimes when I always kind of like observe those things when referees are working, and I try to work where am I at relative to the wrestlers. How far away are they? Because sometimes you'll see referees, and I'm sure all of you know, those people who work really far away, like they're in the center and this person is either out in the zone or even the protection area walking around the edge. Like maybe that's a little bit too far, you know? So, you know, I think it's important to find the right distance. And how do you find the right distance? Well, I think it really just depends on a variety of topics. Number one, the size. Like how big are the individuals that are wrestling? There is a difference between 57 kilos and 125 kilos. That's important to know. You know, the 57 people move a little faster than the 125. So you've got to be able to maybe be a little further back in that group to be able to evaluate those actions, whereas the bigger wrestlers, you might be closer. The style and the level of the wrestling is also an important part of this as well. You know, am I refereeing at a local tournament? I'm refereeing an 8-year-old, or am I refereeing a senior level competition? I think that those things all have to factor into that. I also think you have to look at how active are the wrestlers. If they're really active and there's lots of scoring, as a referee, I'm probably going to work a little bit further back because I want to be able to see more, have a better view. And being further away gives you a better view of the whole situation so you can score it maybe more accurately. But if they're not scoring points, I have to be closer because I have to be verbalizing to them to stimulate more action. So I have to be able to work closer. And I think the key is finding a location where you're close enough that you can get in to stimulate action, and you're also far enough away that you can take a step back and be able to, you know, evaluate that. So we'll take a look at an example of that in a second. Another thing we have to consider with the distance of the wrestlers is the standing versus par terre. If they're in the standing position, I'm probably going to naturally be a little bit further away from them because the actions are much more dynamic at this part. You know, so they can go a lot of different directions, and I've got to be able to get there quickly. And I got to be able to get to the best position to score it. You know, when they're in par terre, there's a limited number of actions they can do, and there's a limited number of distance they can travel. So in par terre, I typically can work a little bit closer in this process because of the different types of actions you're going to see. Now, in par terre, if they get a lift, probably the one thing you'll see immediately when there's a lift, particularly in Greco, you're going to see me as a referee step backwards from that situation, because by stepping backwards and moving to the right position, it's going to give me a better view, one, to be able to score it correctly, but also maybe be able to see a leg foul that may occur. So I think you have to really work on that distance as you go and figure out what's the best distance for you, because you don't want to be too close and you certainly don't want to be too far away. One thing that I'm a big proponent of is the ability to be able to step in and then step out. So when you need to talk to them, you're close enough that you can take 1 to 2 steps in and you're talking to them. And then after you give them a command, you take the steps back and you're back to that good position that you were before. And because you're in that good position, if something happens, you can always take a step back to be able to evaluate it as well. So here, take a look. Sam does a great job here in this video in the World Cup. Notice how he steps in, he gives the command, and then steps back out. So I thought this was an excellent job, just very simple. Comes in a half a meter, gives the command, and then gets back out again. By stepping in, the wrestlers can feel that presence of that referee being there. They can also hear you, and Sam did a great job of using his red hand to tell red, action in that process. And as soon as he didn't stay there. He then took that step back out to be able to see if an action occurs, and he's able to evaluate it better. So that ability of stepping in and stepping out, I think, is a critical aspect when working the distance of wrestlers. The next area here is getting confirmation. We know as a referee, we have to get confirmation on 3 things, passivity, cautions, and falls. And we have to get confirmation from the match chairman on all 3 of those. So the cautions and falls are really 2 separate parts, are different than passivity. Because typically with a caution, if it's in the standing position, I'm always going to stop, blow the whistle, and then I'm going to ask for the caution. But I like to stop the match. That way I indicate the caution, which it makes it noticeably different than the passivity. So I do that often when they're in the standing position. And par terre, it's a little different. But standing, I'm stopping, asking for caution. So then I can look and get confirmation from the match chairman. Falls, I just have to be in the great position to see the fall. So wherever that is, I'm going to get there. And then whenever I have to look, I'm looking directly to the match chairman for that. Now, passivity is a little different because with passivity, we're not stopping the match until after you get confirmation. So how can you position yourself as a referee to be able to see the match chairman through the wrestlers? I think that's a huge mark of a great referee, is their ability to position themselves. Like if you're calling passivity, that means they haven't scored points. So the level of action is not very high. So what that means is you have time to put yourself in position to get confirmation. I don't want to have my back to the match chairman when I'm asking for passivity, because now what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to take my eyes off the wrestlers, turn all the way around to my back to get confirmation. I don't want to take my eyes off the wrestlers. And I think all of you know an example of some point where somebody did this, took their eyes off, they looked, they got confirmation, they blew the whistle as they were coming back, and as they blew the whistle for passivity, an action happened. So this is a great opportunity for a referee to position yourself so that you can see through the wrestlers to the match chairman. That way they're directly in front of you. You ask for the passivity, you get confirmation, you check the wrestlers, make sure there's no action, then you blow the whistle, and then you issue the passivity. This just allows you to keep more vision on the wrestlers. So here's a great example of this. Jeffrey moves, he gives Red a command, and then asks for passivity. And notice where the position he was in here in this process. Look, I know he's looking at the match chairman because of his position here with this, because the camera was on the same side as the match chairman. So as he goes here, he looks, the first place he's asking, right here. He's asking, goes right to this position. He's asking for passivity and looking directly at the match chairman. I think that's an excellent job of putting yourself in position to be able to see that. You get confirmation and go. And I'm not saying that the judge in this position, in this situation, is not important, but the judge, whether they confirm or not, don't confirm, is irrelevant to whether this gets confirmed by the match chairman. So I typically don't like to look back and forth because, again, that's taking vision off the wrestlers. So I just like to position myself to be able to call passivity by looking through the wrestlers to the match chairman. That way my eyes are always on it. The last couple things here is this position in neutral. And when we take a look at this, I kind of put a diagram up here of where the referee would work. So you would work somewhere in these triangles, no matter what side it's on. Anytime that the wrestlers are standing and they're in the neutral position, typically as a referee, I try to like to work kind of right in between them a little bit until I can figure out who the attacking wrestler is, and then I'll start working opposite of them. But in this part, you can see a couple of good examples in these pictures here. Here's Umberto in that same match before. Here they are neutral, and he's almost perpendicular to the wrestlers. This is good. Now Blue's attacking, and he'll circle to his left. And here they are. They've already been scoring ample points, so he's a little bit further back because he's not worried about whether they're going to score points or not. They've already been scoring points. But notice his positioning relative to the wrestlers, almost at a straight 90 degrees perpendicular to him. Now, as a referee, once you realize who the attacking wrestler is most of the time, now I start to work those other positions. Here's where I start to work within this triangle. So if Red's the attacking wrestler, I'm going to work somewhere over here on this side. Whether it's on this side, the top, the left side or the right side of this, it doesn't matter. But I'm working towards that 45-degree angle to that wrestler. Now, the reason I like to work there and not directly behind him is because there certainly is an opportunity. Just because Red's attacking doesn't mean Blue won't attack. So if I'm too far behind Blue and Blue attacks, now I'm chasing the action. So that's a lot of times I don't like to circle and work completely behind wrestlers. I like to work whatever angle I can to be able to move behind the defensive wrestler when there's an attack going. Now, that's for freestyle. For freestyle, I like to work behind freestyle women's wrestling. I like to work behind a little bit of that 45-degree angle behind the defensive wrestler. In Greco-Roman, I actually like to work a little bit behind the attacking wrestler, because if you look at most actions with Greco-Roman, a lot of the throws that happen, they happen behind the wrestler, because when they go to make that throw, they have to turn and pivot their hips in to make that action. And when they do, they're going to throw behind him, not in front of him. So you have to, based on what actions you're seeing, kind of determines where you position yourself a little bit in this process. But I think that these two triangles represent a majority of where you would spin in the neutral position here. The next one here is, this last one here is this position in par. Actually, there's two more left. The one is position in par terre. Like, where do we work at as a referee when they're in the par terre position? So this picture to the left, I've got set up, and I had some dotted lines drawn into this to indicate where the referee is typically going to be. We don't want to be behind and at their feet when these actions occur. We want to be somewhere near their head, and really kind of at a 45-degree angle to either side of directly in front of them is a great place to be. In freestyle, you can be almost directly head up with him. You can see this picture over here to the right, Humberto. This is a freestyle match, and he's directly in front of the wrestlers, so that's good. And the same in that bottom picture as well, because he's expecting those turns to happen, and the wrestlers working on a gut wrench. So he's directly at the head. Now, depending on the action, you might work one side or the other. In Greco-Roman, I might have a tendency to work more at the angles because I'm still at the head of the wrestler, so I can still see if they go past 90. But I can also have an angle and be on the edge to decide a little bit to be able to tell if there was a leg foul or not. So that ability to be able to work within those 90 degrees, 45 one way, 45 the other way, is such an important process here of when they're in that par terre position. And then, moving as they go with it. So just some examples of what the best position is when they're in par terre. The last one here is, what is the position for when they go out of bounds? I think that's another area that's really changed over time. I remember some of you that have been refereeing for a number of years, and I know there's a number of you on this, grouping that do this. Like, you remember a time when they didn't score 1 point for out of bounds. So out of bounds was just out of bounds, and we restarted them back in the center. And our best technique at that time I was taught, was whenever the wrestlers were going out of bounds, it was your job to cut them off. Like, if you got to the out of bounds line here and blocked them, then they had a tendency not to continually keep going straight for you. They would turn and then stay in bounds. So you would just cut them off and try to keep them in bounds that way. Well, when they changed the rule and said, okay, out of bounds step outs are now 1 point, that changed what we had to do. We no longer want to be behind them, because as a wrestler, as a referee, if they're coming directly at you to the out of bounds, what happens is that distance gets shorter and shorter because you can only go backwards so far. And as a result, you start to lose your vision. Like, you can either look down at their feet or you can look at their upper body, but you can't hardly see both. So if an action happens, it's hard to see. So we had to start changing our movement and our position based on when they go out of bounds. So now my opinion here is, if you're looking at an out of bounds situation, your best place to get to is to be exactly 90 degrees from the direction they're going. So if they're going out this way, you want to be at an angle that's at 90 degrees away from it so you can see down the line. And that's what we want to look at. So you can see here in both of these pictures, this is exactly where the referee's position is. So, and I took these from videos, so I could tell you the arrow is the direction these wrestlers were traveling at the time. So the wrestlers are traveling this direction, and the referee wants to be in his best position is going to be 90 degrees, which you can tell here. He's at that 90-degree angle, so he's able to tell who goes out of bounds, when they go out of bounds, and what that score should be better. This is so much better than if he was directly in front of where they were going, he would have to back up, and he would literally be off the mat to be able to have the best view. So we don't want to be off the mat like this. So just move to that 90-degree angle will give you such a great opportunity to evaluate the action correctly. Same thing here with the second picture. You can see the wrestler's direction. They were heading this way. The referee moved to be 90 degrees directly off that, so he's able to see right down the line and know and score this the best as possible here. So whether it's 1 point or 2 points, I can't remember if he finishes this takedown out of bounds, but right now it certainly looks like it's going to be 1 point. But what I'm focusing on here is really that referee being in that position for that. So that kind of wraps up a little bit of the positioning aspect of just some things to consider, like when you're looking as a referee, like what is the best position to be in. And I think as a referee, that's one area we can always continually keep working on. So now, if anybody has any questions, certainly I would take an opportunity to go through and, answer any questions that you may have. So if you have any, please, write them into the question and answer box at the bottom. I would encourage you to keep the questions largely focused on just about talking about referee position, not so much about scoring of actions and things like that. We want to keep this more geared towards that. So if you have a question in terms of referee position or what that is, please, I'll give another minute here or so here to see if any questions come up during this time. Okay, great question. Where must the referee stay during the break? So that's a great question. A lot of times we used to you went once the break happened, you sent them to their corners, and then you would go to each corner and tell them to towel off. Now we're really not doing that. Now I simply just go over to the edge of the mat, so either one side or the other, and just stand off the edge of the mat. That way, it's the wrestlers are just there, and you're able to watch both wrestlers, and you're also be able to see the time. So I just stand there until as the time is counting down on the clock, and then I walk back out with about 6 seconds or so left, and then indicate the wrestlers to come to the center to get started again. So, and at a local event, I just stand off to the side. We may or may not have that 30-second countdown timer, so you just have to sometimes estimate it. But at those big events, and they have the countdown for the 30 seconds, as soon as that gets about 5 seconds, I then go I'm usually kind of in the middle of the mat, but I'm in the middle of the edge of the mat. So I'm off to the edge, and then I walk back to the middle to get them started. Now, if they come back early, I'm going to be there with them as well, but I won't. But typically I stand off the mat somewhere kind of in the middle to watch the clock and the wrestlers. So great question. All right, I'm just going to kind of, move to the last part here. So this last slide, when I talk about this, I kind of like this process here. When I say the best referees, and so I took this and the best referees and then answered this question with this. Before I go through that real quick, a quick question came up here, so I'll do this. Any rule of thumb for a situation when a wrestler starts spinning in a process of looking or defending to go behind? Sometimes I know that as a referee, your position, you're trying to get in the best position to score it, and you feel like you're chasing them around. If you feel like you're taking too many steps in a circle, then stop and go the other direction. Because as they're spinning and as they're going one way, sometimes it's best just to go the opposite way, because then you can cut off the action in the process. So that's what I would recommend doing in that process. So great question. But back here, so as we take a look at this, kind of wrapping up here, the best referees, and then you just fill in the blank here. So the best referees can move and change levels quickly. That's what the best referees do. They're really good at this. The best referees keep learning wrestling techniques. They never get to the part where they're just I know all I need to know about wrestling. It's constantly evolving, and we have to continually be learners in the sport. So keep learning new wrestling techniques. The best referees always anticipate actions and always get to the best position possible. So, you take time to focus on that aspect of where is that action going? Where do you expect it to go? And then be able to put yourself in position. Again, the goal is to be where the action finishes. That's always the goal of the referee. Know how much time is on the clock and score. The best referees always know that. They always know how much time is on the clock. They always know what the score is. There's never a question oh, I didn't know there was that much time. The best referees always know. Also, the best referees will look through the wrestlers to get confirmation on passivity. They can look through, they put themselves in position to make that call. That way their eyes are always on it. That way they never miss an opportunity where an action occurs and they accidentally blew the whistle. The best referees, that typically doesn't happen to them because they position themselves well to get that confirmation. the best referees always maintain the best position and distance in all positions. So they're in the best position they can be, and they maintain the proper distance needed. Again, I would certainly advocate that part of stepping in and then stepping out in that process of communicating and finding that correct distance. And that distance is going to vary from match to match, from style, by the level of wrestlers. But that's, as a referee, that's a part you focus on is, okay, where do I need to be able to effectively referee this match? And the last one is I would encourage everybody, the best referees keep practicing and improving. I think as a referee, you need to get on the mat so you always know what that's like. Even if some of you are in charge of the competitions, many of you are still active referees, and as a result of that, you know what that's like. You know how difficult it is, because sometimes as a referee, if we're sitting off to the side, we're like, well, how did they not get that right? Well, again, it's different if you haven't done it and then you get out there. So for those you coaches that are on this, I would encourage you to get out and referee some, just so you understand what it's like to be out there, because it is much different when you're watching versus when you're in the process of doing this. Now, one thing I would encourage you to do for those of you that are referees, at any event that you go to, particularly like your local events where you're really just practicing, you often don't have to worry about so many different things. Like I know at a local event, I am not worried about passivity, because if there's one thing that kids do is they score points. So I don't really need to worry about passivity. But what I do is I focus on a couple of areas. I focus, one, on trying to make sure I'm in the best position I can be in to evaluate the actions. And sometimes with kids, that's difficult because they do some things that you're not expecting, but it gets you thinking. Two, I work on making sure I'm using the best referee mechanics I can. That's a great opportunity to practice those as well with your scoring of points and your hand movements. And then the last one is I really work on, evaluating the holds, being able to take time to score those points and evaluating the situations. So any chance you get, you can always work and practice on different areas of refereeing, and particularly one is referee position. So again, I'd just like to take an opportunity just to thank everybody for joining today. So it was great having everybody here. I do have my email address up here. So if there is any time you have a question, or if there's something I can help you with, I will gladly answer. I get back to you as quickly as possible, and will certainly do my best to help where you're at. So we want to continue to help those of you develop as referees and really help develop your countries in any way we can. Really that's our goal in the development department, is to, really help grow wrestling. And growing wrestling isn't just about wrestlers and coaches. It's also about growing referees, because we need those individuals to be able to help referee those matches. And really it's a collaborative process amongst all those groups to really elevate a national federation. In a couple of weeks, I'll be back for really our last webinar for the development department with referees, in this process. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be back and we'll be looking at controlling the bout. Typically, I've been going on Wednesdays. In a couple of weeks, I'll actually be on a Tuesday. So please check the schedule. We'll have a couple of changes in terms of when the topics are going to be held in different times. So I would encourage you to follow that schedule and come back, and hopefully I'll see you for the last one that I'll be doing, which is I'll be on controlling the bout. In the meantime, I would always encourage you to, get an opportunity to go to the other webinars that are offered. One being, the referee commission is doing webinars every Monday on specific aspects of the rules. So I would encourage you coaches, wrestlers, and referees to go there, just as a great way for referees, just a great way to review what needs to be called. And for coaches, it's a great opportunity to go see how it's being called, because if you understand how it's being called, you can coach it to maximize your points. So again, take an opportunity to go to those webinars. They're every Monday. So please visit there. They're going to be doing those until September. It's a great job. So a great opportunity to learn. And then also join us for any of the other, we have referee webinars in other languages. And then we also have coaching webinars, and I'll be doing a coaching webinar tomorrow on identifying key factors and introducing new skills. So you can certainly join me back here tomorrow if you want to, at the same place, same time, and I look forward to it. So again, I just like to, thank everybody for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And so I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and hopefully we'll be able to see everybody back at a tournament sometime soon. So thanks, and have a great rest of your day.